Squad Pod, what is up? This is episode 17, and as you can see, we're a little shorthanded today. Our fearless leader, Bill Calkins, is on a much-deserved vacation this week, and then before heading out to spring trials next week. So if you're really here for Bill, I apologize. You can shut the podcast off now. But if you're more of a Seth or Mason aficionado, we are here to cover your weekly needs. Yeah, so Seth, how's the week been, man?
It's been good. I have to say, I thought you did a lovely job with the intro.
Oh, thank you.
I was really concerned, because I know Bill always does the intro and he does a really good job. And then I wasn't quite sure how you would approach it, but I give you a solid B minus on that. So I just want to let you know that. Yeah,
That might be one of only like 3 B minuses I've ever received in my entire life.
sorry. There's someone outside my window right now, so I wasn't expecting it. So we're good.
They don't have any sort of weapon or machete, chainsaw. It's a little early in the year for Halloween pranks.
Yeah, they're working on the roof. That would probably really scare me too. But yeah, sorry. Week was good. What a week though, right here in Chicagoland? Because on Monday my kids had a snow day, and then yesterday like 60 degrees, and then today I think it's 70 degrees. 60,
Yeah,
right at 70 degrees.
I just
So
went up, kids were eating lunch, and like everybody's sweaty from running around outside. It's kind of wild. Now in my dungeon down here, I can see through the window that there's light outside, but that's about it, basically all I get. But I can tell it's warmer because it's actually colder down here because I'm
uh,
underground.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, I haven't gone outside yet. I will though when I leave the office. But yeah, I mean that's like Illinois, right? Like, Illinois is just like kind of crappy. It can like, and especially in spring, it can be like super cold, super warm. But I feel like, but I guess the plus side is then people are like, extra stir crazy for spring, and then they're like ready to go. They're like, oh, I need to plant stuff, and like run in the garden center and hopefully buy a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I always it's funny. We at the garden center, Illinois weather very similar to Michigan weather where I grew up, and we would always, we didn't open doors. We were one of those grow in the back, sell out the front. I always want to get the front back wrong there, and we'd
Oh,
always have people stopping in April to try to buy plants, and I was always like, listen. It's not going to happen. It's not a good idea. I know it's 70 degrees today, but next week is going to be 30 and everything's going to die. But we refuse to open up until May 1st. And I know what's crazy is that as a garden consumer now, um, I am there. I am on that side of things in this. Like last year, I planted all my vegetable plants like the first week of May, and thankfully we didn't get any frost or freeze. But I got to stop doing that because I'm gonna get burnt one of these years, and I'm gonna have to buy my plants twice.
can't you just cover with plastic though?
You can, but then you gotta one, we know that, but some folks, that's not an ability that they have. And I also don't want to go out and cover. I've got like arches and stuff in my gardens. I don't want to have to go cover them with frost cloth or
Well,
plastic.
the vines are.
No, no, but I'm thinking more, how do I get the plastic? Because the arches are in, I'm like,
Oh,
put them in, so I can't just, like, roll a sheet of plastic over the top of flat beds. That would be easy, but I do not have that advantage.
yeah. What if, because I mean, I can understand, like, I remember working at a garden center too, right? And like people would come in super early and you're like, hey, it's not the frost free date yet, so you shouldn't put stuff out. But it's kind of also sort of unfair to the consumer, right? Like if they
Yes.
really want it, should you not give them an opportunity to get it? And if you don't sell it to them, they're going to go somewhere else to wherever they can buy
I
it.
know, I know. I you know, trying to figure out what that happy medium is because so many of these folks, don't know what that and frost-free dates are. It's not a guarantee by any means. So it's like balancing those expectations. But Seth, you bring up a good point.
No, wait,
What? Oh,
wait,
okay,
don't
okay, I'm waiting.
don't go next. I had a random, possibly bad idea, right? One of my usual
Here
random
we go. Here
ideas.
we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, right. So like, because every garden center has like the boxes or the bags, to like, you know, put stuff in, right? What if like before the frost free date they had one color bag or one color box, and then post frost free date they could have a different one. So then everyone that like buys something that's too early, there would be like a big reminder, like, hey, this might not live through the weekend.
So what you're saying is that for the general gardening populace that has trouble understanding the USDA hardiness zone map, we want to add another color coding into that, as in bags of if they buy something in a yellow bag, it is going to die, possibly. But if they buy something in a white bag, it probably won't die. And then we're going to add in the complexity of having a garden center employee that runs out of white bags. What if he grabs a yellow bag? He or she grabs a yellow bag in the end of June, and then somebody's like, wait, this is going to die because it's in June? I don't know.
You know what? Like I said, it was possibly a bad idea, and really, that was listeners that was not going to join the conversation right now. So you were supposed to just be like, "Oh, that's really
That's
interesting." All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, so let's kick it off today. And my week also, thanks for asking, Seth, has been great. It's been busy. I feel like spring is kind of picking up, and people are, getting antsy about things. I think geopolitical situations. Obviously, I'm working in fertilizer. A lot of questions on what's happening, and a lot of people and I discussing the differences of. With all of the things and shipping nightmares, and I'm sure you've seen news about fertilizer, but discussing like what kinds of fertilizer are affected because, there's a big difference between water soluble and ag fertilizer that gets applied, mechanically or granularly. And so just kind of walking through that, but it's created a busy week for me, but overall a good week. And yeah, like you said, weather crazy, but happy to get outside this weekend, hopefully. So yeah, but this week I'm excited, and we didn't run this by Bill. We probably should have, but we're two kids without parents this week,
Yeah.
and so I want to talk about this and make this this week's focus. Is while Bill also has this experience, we're cutting him out of the conversation. Sorry, Bill. We can get your take on it some other time. But Seth, as we've just discussed, you have experience working in a garden center. I certainly have experience working in what I would call a retail greenhouse. As a kid, I always just called it the greenhouse. Like you went to a greenhouse to buy plants. I actually didn't understand the term garden center until I graduated college and got in, maybe not graduate, but was actively invested in leaving my own front door to pursue a career outside of my family business. What's a garden center? I always just called them greenhouses. And like, yeah, you went to your greenhouse to buy flowers, but I'll call it a garden center as what it is. We sold plants to the public. So we both have experiences in that genre of work as young folks. And I think that much shaped what we eventually started to do in the industry. And so I wanted to and I think that's true for a lot of folks. There's a lot of folks in the industry that have some shape, form, experience working in a garden center. And I would almost say that it is critical experience for
Well,
people that are interested in being in the industry to have at some point or another. And I think that it's definitely gives you some perspective on how the industry works and how consumers participate in the industry. But I want to focus today's episode on let's talk about some of those experiences. I know that for you, much more than those experiences are long in the rear view, just because it's been, 3 or 4 decades since you worked in a garden center. Whereas, it's only been a handful of years for me.
this just now, like on my
I didn't
page,
know if I didn't know if you were gonna catch it. You were like, "Oh, yeah, yeah," writing notes, and I was like, "Man, he's not gonna understand that. I'm just saying that he's so much older than me."
you just said a slow too. God, where's
So
Bill?
so let's start there. So, I think working in a garden center, it obviously couldn't have been too terrible for us because we stayed in the industry eventually, whether we went off and did other things first. But, I ask you, Seth, like working in a garden center, what are some of your favorite memories or favorite things about working in a garden center?
Hmm. You know what? I think that one thing that comes to mind, which I've kind of also pitched to other people when I talk about the industry, is that like you didn't have to like you could be a little bit sorry. There was a relaxed sort of manner to a lot of the stuff that we did, right? Like you didn't. I mean, you worked
Oh, yeah,
really
Mother's Day weekend, so relaxed.
okay. You don't have to like okay. So like if you work at like a bank, right?
Yeah.
Like you gotta like look really nice and you're like kind of on all the time because like you're in like a pretty good business setting. Or if you're at a restaurant, like right, like you have a like particular like outfit that you have to wear. The garden center I worked at, like we did not have like team shirts necessarily. We were like that, so like you got to wear like a t-shirt and jeans, shorts in the summer.
So you're saying
And
the dress code. You led off with the best thing about working in a garden center is the dress code. Singular best thing?
I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of what would
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I probably would have started with the plants. You hate plants? Get out of here. I know that's a lie. You just wish you would have said it. I think for me that that was always my interest early on as a kid, and I know that that's probably, like, people are like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, kid. You're just saying plants to sound good on a podcast." But I think that there's something about being exposed to so many different species of plants that you get to see cool things happen. Every day is like a scientific excitement. Seth, let's talk about this for a second. Science class in high school,
Yeah.
there are those days where you come into the class and there's like an experiment set up, right? And the teacher's going to do a demo. And those days are really cool because, all right, something's, blowing up, it's got catching on fire, like we're doing this, we're turning something into something else. And the rest of the class, can be pretty like, hey, here, we're going to learn about this on the chalkboard, on the book, whatever. But I think every day in a greenhouse is like the demo day in science class, just because you're like, oh, wow, look at this. This is starting to bloom. Or what's this weird bug that I got to, eradicate? So it's very hands on. I think maybe that's it. Maybe that's a better thing. Is it not the plants, but the hands on science aspect of a
Like,
greenhouse?
with the plant side, I think that it's kind of interesting how people's brains work and how, like, what really is it about plants that people are just like drawn to, right? Like, because other people are, it's like animals or coding, right? Like,
Yeah.
but, to your point is before I worked in a garden center, all I really knew about plants were like a Chinese evergreen, a Dracaena, pothos, and then the Diefenbachia, right? Like there's like those house plants from like the 70s that my parents had. And then I worked at a garden center, and then there's like an explosion of like hundreds of different house plants and orchids and bonsai and succulents. And I do feel like as a kid and like that connection to plants, I found it super interesting to learn about all these weird things. And then I had this boss, Bob, I've mentioned him before.
Yeah.
He had worked there for several years already. So like, he would be like repotting stuff and I'd be like, what is this plant? Where's it from? Does it bloom? Like I was just enamored with all of these the plants. So I think yeah, I would agree with like what you said. If you have an interest in plants, to be able to work at a garden center where you're constantly exposed to a lot of different options
Yeah.
and can be really enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm gonna tack on to that, say maybe the next favorite thing, and maybe my actual favorite thing, but we got there eventually, is, the people, right?
Mhm.
So, I don't know about you, but, at the greenhouse, they let me talk to the people. They thought I was presentable enough, and, again, good with people. I don't know if they did that with you or just kept you in the back. Um I thoroughly enjoyed the interaction, and I mean that in a sense that, as we just talked about, garden centers have, I don't know, I'm gonna exaggerate, 10,000 different things that somebody could select, right?
Yeah, I can do that.
And seeing what picks up somebody's interest. Because as somebody that works there, you're like, "That plant's terrible. I hate this plant. I hope I never have to see it again." Or you're like, "Man, that looks like it hasn't been watered in a month." And most people probably agree with you because your opinions are based on what's flying out the door, but you could very well have a lady walk in the next day and be like, "That is the most beautiful basket I've ever seen. I need it, want it, gotta have it," and, you're loading it into somebody's truck, and I used to sit there and think like, "She picked that one? Why
Mhm.
would she pick that one?" But then, you start to learn that preferences aren't all the same, and that became very clear. I think, certain things you're like, "Okay, red geranium basket with the vinca coming down. I'm gonna sell
Mhm.
these to pretty much, 50% of the people that come in," but these weird combos or whatnot. I always used to get yelled at because I would make combos, but my mom always said that they were depressing. I think it was just the music I was listening to in high school was, emo music. So all of my pots were very dark, like dark sweet potato vine, a Persian shield. Give me some dark petunia in there. It was all like black and blue. Oh, black and blue salvia. I throw that in there quite a bit. But she was always like, "Why is everything so dark? You need some pops of color." And it would blow her mind that people would come in and buy those pots because somebody was connecting with what I was putting down, but just very different tastes on that angle from me and my mom. So,
Mm.
yeah, people and the interactions. I think like you never know what's gonna spark their interest, and
Well,
or you're like, what are they gonna buy?
yeah, and I think on the people side of that is their reactions. Their genuine love of plants, right?
Yeah.
Like I'd say, I mean, you always had a few, but like 90% or more people were super pumped to be at the garden center,
Yep.
find something. And that's so different. Like if you think of like the food industry, like probably half the people are probably get kind of pissed off at some point because the food didn't turn out the way they wanted it to. The automotive industry, everyone hates paying for all the things, right? Like you could.
Car shopping and grocery shopping, I gotta believe, are not high on the list of things that people want to do.
Yeah, right? So, like, there's all these other sort of industries that people could work where they're dealing with, like, people, like, almost at their worst or just at a high stress level, whereas people coming in the garden center, people are super jazzed. They're feeling really good. It's their passion. So I think that was, like, always a really nice aspect that, like, you're just surrounded by people that were like, really happy, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, and it's always way better to focus on that. I would say that on the same kind of people vibe, I think one of my favorite things about working in the garden center was also the other people I was working with, and now I was working at a family operation. We're seasonal. In the summer we switched to vegetables grown in the field, but a lot of my shifts as a high schooler and even after I graduated were with people my own age. And so, like I'd have a group of 5 or 6 teenagers that I was in charge of and managing, and as a teenager, which is kinda wild, but it was always fun. Camaraderie was always high. Did I steal that one from you?
I wrote it down. You can't tell because my handwriting's really crappy, but I wrote down camaraderie. I don't actually know how to spell that word either.
So here's one thing we might share based on that, the knowledge of your handwriting. I was never allowed to write the signs. Like if
Mm.
we had, like if like, hey, 4.5 inch material is going to be 449. Stick a sign in it and say 449 because we didn't have a fancy printer. I was never allowed to write those because
You use paint pens on the marker
yeah,
on the.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
it was like the black sign with, like, the white paint pens. Yeah, I was never allowed to write those because every time I did, my mom was like, "People have to be able to understand what the price is." And I go, "Well, I'm sure they can." She goes, "The people working the cash register can't understand what the price is." So,
Well, and like going back to like your time, like you had said that like they let you talk to people, right? Like
yeah,
I didn't really know anything at all, right? Like you at least you grew up in the business. So
yeah.
like at a very young age, you probably knew all the tomatoes that you guys offered, right? Like you were like right, like you were going to the farm stands starting what, 4, 5?
I mean, I have a picture of me in a bassinet or in a baby carrier at the market, so younger than that, since I can read.
So you knew all this stuff. And then when I started working there when I was like 15, I was always sort of personable, right? I was like, "Oh yeah, like I can do customer service. I can do this." My boss was like, You don't really like they're gonna ask you questions, like, and so I didn't know anything. I just knew like the sun greenhouse and then the shade greenhouse, right? And then people would like I would observe, I'd try to like learn stuff, and then they would like then sometimes I'd go outside my lane and be like, oh, I'd start like answering questions that I think I knew, but then like I didn't quite know. And then so then like yeah, so I think they were like trying to somewhat limit. By after working there for like 3 or 4 summers, right? Like I started to know a little bit more, but I didn't really know very much those early days.
Well, and it's kind of wild too. I think back, like I'm sure that I thought I knew way more than what I knew at certain points, but I never wanted to let on that I didn't know something. So,
Do you recall any mistakes that you made? Oh yeah, you actually weren't supposed to do that thing.
not anything big. I was pretty good at knowing because some of the big questions you get asked, right? Is this a perennial? Is this
Mm,
sun or shade? I think probably where I made my most mistakes was, is this going to flower all summer? Because some things that I thought were like, I think about this all the time is that I didn't know when I was like 14, 15 that, and I don't even know if my parents knew at the time because the crop was relatively new to being popular, was osteospermum.
yeah.
Is that people would ask us all the time, like, "Is this gonna flower all summer?" And I think the general assumption, like, there's a lot of visual assumptions that happen at this level of garden center and garden center employees that you're like, daisy type flowers, right? Most daisy type flowers are full sun. They like
Yeah.
it hot. It's gonna flower all summer. But
Mm.
osteospermums, do not like it really hot, and so, at least for the most part, like and this was back before a lot of the breeding came in to that made them better at taking the heat.
I feel like when I was so this was probably like late 90s into 2000, we used to have these Daisy standards. It was like a, like, the standard, like the
Argyranthemum.
I thought what it was, a bright yellow that kind of looked like an osteo. Does that
Yeah,
stuff?
I don't know, we used to sell a lot of those, people love those. We didn't necessarily have the standards, but we had them in, like, 10-inch pots, and, like, it was just like a bush of
Mm.
daisy, like a hedge of yellow daisy, because they came in yellow, and then I think they also came in pink, like a light pink,
I don't
because
remember
what's the other one? It's called a butterfly daisy, right?
possibly.
Yeah, but it's Argyranthemum, and I don't even know if those like it hot, now that I think about it.
Well,
But I
hey,
definitely was like, yeah, all summer, throw it out there in July, because 'cause I'm
yeah,
like, daisies love the heat.
oh, yeah. Bill would say something like, "Oh, hey, if you're listening to this and you like tell us, like, are you still selling these Argyranthemums?" Do
Yeah,
people remember those from like the 90s? I think it was like all the rage. I actually think it was I can't specify. I don't know if Monrovia was doing those or not. I felt like it was in a green pot. Maybe it was someone else's plant, but I can see what you're saying, like with the osteo, like, oh yeah, osteos will probably do really well all summer because you got these other daisy like
yeah,
items. I do remember a mistake. It was more behind the scenes mistake that so we had all this cactus and succulents. Like we had a ton of houseplants actually. And so my boss was showing me how to repot the cactus, and he's like, all right, with all these you got to wear the leather gloves and you got to like wrap things in paper and stuff. And I was a young kid and I'm like, why? I don't think I needed it. Like there's isn't even any like big spines on this, like one of these small ones, it wasn't like the really thorny ones. It was the ones where like there's little dots and it looks like there's little hairs
yeah.
off hairs. I'm like, oh yeah, this is fine. So I just use my bare hands to like repot this orchid. Well, come to find out, those little tiny hairs are hooks, and they're like really, really tiny hooks. So then they get in your skin. You like can't get them out.
Next time you touch something is when it hurts.
Yeah, it's like fiberglass or something, right? And so I planted this thing and I looked at my hands and they were just covered in these little hairs, like my whole hands were, right? And I'm like, oh my God. And it was like, like starting to hurt as I was trying to like pull them out. It was awful. And my boss was like, why weren't you wearing the gloves? Like I told you to. I said, well, I didn't see any spines, you know?
'Cause they don't hurt on the like, when you touch it. Like, you could touch it, like but
Yeah.
it's gonna hurt the next time you put your hand on something when all those little spines come out and press back into your hand.
Yeah, he was like, just like, what a moron. Like, why? I feel like, I mean, my brain is a little wonky sometimes. So I feel like I did a fair amount of things that I probably was like one of those high school kids who were like, what's wrong with this kid? Like, why does he keep doing these things? But I turned out sort of okay eventually.
Yeah, the world's better for having you, I'll say that. No, I'd say you know what I learned very quickly is that and I think this is kind of like IT too, in a way. I'm a weird comparison. It's okay. Bill made weird comparisons last week. I'll make them this week. Hopefully not offending anybody. But I think that a fair chunk of IT is, and maybe not a fair chunk, but at least a small portion, is being able to follow directions and read directions better than anybody else. And that's why, the joke about, hey, did you turn it off, turn it on again? Hey,
Yeah.
it's a lot of like, well, did you install it correctly? Did you restart? And then, there's always bigger problems, but that's when it's like, okay, leave your machine here. I'll take a look at it. But I think a fair chunk, what I learned quickly is that like people are going to ask me questions that if they just read the tag, they'd know. And so, and everything for the most part has a tag. Or if you're like, okay, hey, this is a type of begonia, I'm gonna go look at another type of begonia, find a tag. And so it's like, oh, is this sun or shade? You're like, look at this tag. Oh, this is for shade. Or the other question is, how tall is this gonna get? And that's on every tag. So it's like, oh, it gets, 10 to 12 inches tall. And people would be like, well, is that from the back? And I was like, well, that's from the ground level. Like, I was like, "You're not just gonna set this flat on your."
I mean, I know that like I do think that some people would get really irritated at that, maybe you. And that's it seems like a lot of people then like go to the wholesale side of things, right? So they don't have to deal with those questions. I liked those. It made
Yeah.
me feel intelligent because I'd be like, I'd memorize the tag and be like,
Yeah,
"Oh." No, they'd be like so they
and they'd be like, "How do you know all this?" That would always make me feel so smart, and I'd always come as a teenager, I'd come up with some smarty alecky response, but really it was just about, like, I'm around these tags all day,
yeah.
walking along somewhere, you pick up a tag, you read it. It's kinda like, being in a bathroom without a newspaper, right? You gotta read the shampoo label.
Well,
So, there's not a lot to read in a garden center, so you're just picking up tags and reading, you're like, "Okay, yeah, these plants get about 18 inches tall." And you realize that the vast majority of things fall in like 3 ranges, right?
well,
It's either like 36 inches maximum, 24 inches, or 18 inches.
yeah, that was a benefit, I think, of my generation and a little bit you is not having a phone, not having a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
To where the boss was like, all right, when you're watering, like I was in charge of watering the perennials. So he's like, you should like when you're like pick up some of the tags while you're watering and just to start to get a feel for all the different plant names and where they are and how big they are. So that's what I did. Like when you're watering, especially in the summer, like every other day, you're going through and watering the same things because there's all hand water what we're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, and so then I like
Same.
got to learn all these things. And like to your point, people would come out, and so it's like I could answer a sun or shade. I could say where they are. I could do height, and then they'd be like, "Oh well, mine gets a fuzzy leaf." Hmm. I don't know, right? Like then they would go like into like this like extra letter set of questions that weren't like pertaining to the tag, and then I had to
Then you
call.
just ask that's where you just gotta ask questions back, so it's like, "Oh, mine looks like this." And then you just be like, "But if it looks like that it looks like that, but does it do this?" And they're like, "I don't know." And I'm like, "Well, figure that out, come back to me, and then we can kinda cross-reference notes."
Oh wow, you're just sending them home without any help?
No, no, I'm just being facetious. But no, these are all good points, and that's where like now I don't know what it'd be like to kind of work in a garden center now that you brought up smartphones because like our phones in the garden center, everybody was Direct Connect, Nextel. Like I still have the same phone number from when I had a Nextel, and people are always it always comes through weird too. Like sometimes when I call people, the caller ID shows XX2, and I think it's because I went from Nextel to Sprint to T-Mobile all through the acquisitions, so my number has never changed, but I've been through 3 different phone companies, and I'm just like, "Yeah, sorry, guys, it's a real person here, it's not XX," though maybe that'll be my, name when AI takes over. It'll be my clanker name. But good points overall. So that's some of the highlights, but now I wanna talk about some of the lowlights. What are some of the least favorite things that you had working at like, what's your least favorite things you remember from working in a garden center?
You know what? I don't know if it's like at the time least favorite, but like mornings, right? Like oftentimes you start a little bit earlier sometimes, because you gotta get things watered before people come in the door. I don't know. I don't I mean my hands were always kind of had a slight tinge to them, right? From like, playing in the dirt and planting stuff. So
I'm
oh,
I'm gonna go I'm gonna bounce off that idea. This is something that the industry doesn't address enough, but we certainly, in my crew of guys and gals in the greenhouse, we address it all the time because it's a silent killer in the garden center industry. Is finger fatigue. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're a lucky individual. But how
well,
many it would always be, when you got 4 teenage guys on one crew working all day, there's a little bit of a contest there at all times. And so, we'd always have those rookie guys that would come in, they'd see, us carrying two pots, sometimes 3 in each hand, right? And they'd be like, "I can do the more than that. I got 5 fingers. I put them all on this." And we'd always look at him and be like, "Dude, it's 8 a.m.
four
We're gonna be
trade
here all."
each hand, right? You can do 4 trade gallons in one hand.
I don't like to do more than 3. I'll tell you this, is that if you depending on what you gotta do, if it's the end of the day and you got your strength left in you, sure. But if it's 8 in the morning and you're gonna be moving plants all day, you're gonna run into finger fatigue. And what I'm saying is your fingers, there isn't enough muscle in your finger to be able to hold on to 4 pots in each hand all day long. So we'd always tell these guys, be like, "Bro, you better watch out. You can get finger fatigue, and then you're gonna be done. You're gonna be sitting on the sidelines. You're gonna be carrying 1 pot in each hand, and then you're gonna be killing us all afternoon." So
Hmm.
we always told people, we're like, "Hey, 2, 3 most. If you think you're a tough guy, start with 3. We'll take you down to 2 quickly." Yeah, and then But that was a big thing. I wrote that down. That's one of my top 3 dislikes from working in a garden center is finger fatigue. Your fingertips can only hang on to so much,
You have
but
2 other things?
what?
You came up with 3 things that you don't like about working at a garden center?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is off the top of the dome. So, the next one that I have does not apply to everyone because we were like I said, we're a retail greenhouse, and we used to take, large box trucks, times like semi-sized trucks of racks of plants to Pontiac, Oakland County Farmers Market. And we used to sell plants at a farmers market. And when I say that, like we've talked about this before, my experience with farmers markets is not probably what the modern farmers market experience looks like. Like I'm talking about semi loads of plants that you would bring racks, unload all these hanging baskets and flats off of the racks, set them on the ground, and then you'd be taking cash for these things all day. And like we'd have landscapers come up and be like, I need 60 flats. I'm
Yeah.
gonna slide these out. You put them to the back. I'm gonna bring the truck around. You load me up. So we'd load up on Friday, and loading up was, and it wasn't ordered. Nothing. There were some orders, some, but most of it was like spec. So we're just like, what looks good? What are we gonna sell tomorrow? Is it gonna rain? Is the sun gonna be out? If the sun wasn't gonna be out, then I'm not taking gazanias because they only open up in the sun. And would be the other thing we had to think about was, is it a vegetable day? Like, is it vegetable planting season? Because then we'd take 3 racks of vegetable starts. But if it wasn't, then we'd only bring 1. And also like, okay, you got Mother's Day and Memorial Weekend. Those 2 weekends gonna be pots and hanging baskets. So you gotta set aside so many racks for those things because you only have so much room in the truck. And loading up was kind of exciting. You're like, all right, I gotta have 2 shelves of these zinnias. Like, I'm gonna sell all of them. Then I gotta get, 6 shelves of impatiens or whatever. So that was exciting. But the worst part, so you load it all up on Friday, and a lot of people think this is the worst part, but it's not. Load them all up on Friday, and then most of the time I would have. So we had some guys come drive into our house at 2:30 in the morning. They'd park their truck and drive the semi down. Or if they were teenage friends of mine, they were working the market with me. They would just come over on Friday night. We'd crash. Everybody'd sleep on the couch. Wake up at 2:30 in the morning and drive down to Pontiac, and then we'd set up, and like everything would be set up by 5:30, 6 a.m. Because you're really only selling times are from 6:30 when you're finished setting up until 1, and then you close up shop and you're going home. Well, the everybody thinks that the worst part is getting up at 2:30. Nah, you're fine. Especially as a teenager, you're fine. You get there, you're unloading the racks. A lot of people think that's the hard part. It's 3 a.m., you're unloading racks. You're fine. The hard part is when it's a rough day at market and you got to load all that stuff back up. That's not even the hard part yet. The hard part is loading all that stuff back up on a racks because you're not going to leave it, and you got to take it back to the greenhouse. That is the worst part of market days. Is you're getting home at about 3:30, 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, and you got all kinds of stuff you wanna do. You've been up since 2:30, so you're tired. You haven't eaten a lot because there's no food at the market most of the times unless you want, like, a bagel, and you gotta unload a full truck. We'd pray for those days where we almost sold out, and you'd be like, "Yeah, we got half a rack to unload." But yeah, you're sitting there and you gotta unload a full truck worth of plants in a matter of 20, 30 minutes. Give me a break. It was awful.
Because then you were, like, sitting on the truck for what, an hour, hour and a half?
Hour and a half.
And then you had to, like you go from, like, probably falling asleep,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
then
say, if you're not driving, you're falling asleep. You're asleep on the way.
yeah, and it's like, "Oh, get up. We gotta unload all this crap."
Yeah.
Mm. And then did you, like were you able to save the stuff for the following weekend? Or, like,
Yeah.
some of
I mean,
the then
oh, it was fine. Like some of it gets a little wind beaten up, but like all those baskets we don't sleeve, hang them right back on the rack, and they'd sell the next day. This is mainly a problem when it's like raining, like
yeah.
because you're pretty good at knowing, like, okay, in the spring at the market. The first weekend of May is fine. You're not bringing in your most stuff. Mother's Day weekend is usually pretty good, but it's not like most of the time you're dealing with like 13th to 14th of May. So it's not your peak selling season still. Really the best weekend at the market in May is the weekend between Mother's Day and Memorial Day. We always found that that was our best weekend. I could sell anything on those weekends. And the years that were the best years are when you get 2 weekends between Mother's Day and Memorial Day weekend because both of those weekends are great. And then Memorial Day weekend is usually okay, but the problem is that so many people go do vacations on Memorial Day weekend. It is not the biggest planting weekend that you can think of. At least it wasn't. Times may have changed now, but yeah, we'd always pray for those years where it was 2 weeks with between Mother's Day and Memorial Day because we can make a killing. And so that I used to go on Saturdays because I obviously went to school during the week, at least when I was in high school. When I come home from college, I was done by the, 5th of May. So I was working full seasons. But my mom and some hired folks would also go Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, you were loading truck. Like that was
Mhm.
like half the crew is selling retail, half the crew is just loading these trucks. And so, yeah, it was, but like Saturday, always the biggest and just
Mm.
wild. And so if it would rain, that would suck because everything gets loaded down with water that you're trying to take off racks. But most of the time, you're able to salvage things. And that's where we didn't split flats. So if you split flats, good luck. Like on vegetables, a lot of those were just trash because we split vegetable because most people want a pack of cabbage, a pack or two of these tomatoes. But like on we used to sell in 12 trays, T1204s, T1203s. If somebody was like, "Oh, I want a pack of petunias," we were like, "Sorry, that's not how these are sold." Like a whole tray is at the time I was like $10. And so
All right.
yeah,
10.99 is what we sold them for.
yeah, and so we'd be like, "It's $10." And, either, like, you can either buy a whole tray or because we had 2
Mhm.
stalls, and the outside was where my domain, underneath, there was, like, a canopy, but, like, I was selling full flat material. And then the inside stall, this is, like, all my language I'm speaking, but it was, like, inside but there was a building at the market, and my mom and some of the inside folks, it was always me and my dad at the outside. They would do 4.5-inch material. So it was less about like, "Oh, I've got 30 flats of this." That was what I was moving, and she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna bring in 100 trays of 4.5-inch material. So if you wanted something, I just need 1 petunia. Go in and see Debbie. She's got the 4.5-inch material. You're looking for this in a 4.5-inch pot. You make your own container." And that's where she used to go.
Did you guys always go to the same market?
I did, yes, but I know that I take that back. For the most part, yes, and then but before I was born, I think they used to go down to there were used to be some other markets in the Detroit area. I don't know if they ever went to Eastern, which is the big market down there, but that's like the Eastern Detroit market is, like, massive, and most of that is wholesale, like,
Yeah.
and used for vegetables. But
Yeah.
there used to be like a Royal Oak market. I know some people go to Flint. We never went to Flint. But I also used to do there was a farmers market in Port Austin. And this is more what people are used to when I say farmers markets. It's a resort town. There's probably like 800 people that live in this town year round. And so I would go up there the end of May and just take all pots and hanging baskets. People looking to deck out lake houses, cottages, cabins. Excuse me. It wasn't about flat material there, but that one was I'd only take one box truck and usually one guy, and we'd get to leave a little later too. I was only like an hour away, so I'd leave at like 5 because most people in a resort town are not getting there at 6 a.m.
Yeah. Was there a scenario maybe when I did burpee or when we did grow it?
Yes, you came to the market. I think
I
I think
so.
we were just starting Grow It.
Were we in Detroit for something specific? And
You were so I think this is where it was like Grow It was like an idea, and it might have been in 2014. So you were
oh,
still working on Burpee. We hadn't been officially like transitioned to Grow It yet. And I had went home. It might have been for a Mother's Day weekend or Memorial Day weekend because I had already graduated and was like doing my job. But I think I went home and was helping out at the farm and the greenhouse and went to market. And then I think you were there visiting English Gardens.
probably because they did a big burpee program and I worked really closely with them and with the different stores. So that they must have had me out there for like an English Gardens event. Cause yeah, I remember somewhere in the back of my brain seeing your parents
Yeah.
at the farm stand with a big box truck, but I couldn't place kind of when that was.
Yeah, that was I remember you being there, and that yes, you were there visiting English Gardens and doing their event because I did that event the year before. You were at spring trials, I wanna say, for burpee, and I had only did that was my first year at ball, and I was only doing spring trials as a setup. I wasn't
Uh,
the
you probably
presentation crew.
covered me, right?
I did. I went to their I forget what they called it, but it was like their that one weekend, they did events at all, like, 5 or 6 locations
Big
and used
garden.
to garden party. That was what
Yeah.
it was, and I used to or you were going around to, like, 6 different locations and doing little talks on, here we go.
Yeah.
It was the Boost program and the, uh, Grafted.
Yeah.
Yep, and so I had all these little note cards, and it was talking about I think there were, like, 7 vegetables in the Boost line. It was, like, gold standard was the yellow cucumber. I'm trying to think there what
Solar
was
power.
the
Yeah,
solar power?
the
That was the
small
other one.
tomato.
What was it? Tasty Lee?
Yeah, there was a tasty deal. That's a slicing dough.
Mighty something? Or well, Mighty Mato was the grafted, right?
Nah, well, Mighty Mato was like the technology. It was
Yeah,
called
bumper crop, that's what it was. Yes. Oh, yeah. So I had all these cue cards because you were like, "Hey, I can't make it, but you seem to be okay with this. Will you go do it?" And I remember, again, at this point, I'd been working for Ball from January until May, and so I was still doing some marketing. And they were like, "Yeah, this seems yeah, good use of your time. Go do this." And they were like I was like, "Well, I can take my car home." And they're like, "Well, then you'll have to expense the mileage." And I was like, "Oh." And they're like, "Take the company car." And so I drove home that weekend and I drove in I stayed at my I was like, "I can save money. I'll stay at my house because English Gardens is like the first location is like 25 minutes, 35 minutes from my house." And I drove the Chrysler 300 that Ball had. I don't even they probably still don't have that, but it was great. It had Fiesta written on the license plate. That was the vanity plate, and so I remember I was like, "Yeah, I'm rolling in this Chrysler 300, custom plates, looking slick." And so, but yeah, but the next year I think you weren't at spring trials. Spring trials was like I said, I feel like the garden party when I did it was in April, but I feel like when you did it was in May. Like they realized that you can't plant tomatoes in April in Michigan. So yeah, definitely did that. I'm trying to think.
What?
There's something else there, but
So I did think of a least favorite thing of
yeah.
working in a garden center, which is composting or throwing away plants.
Mm,
Like it was like, and I think it's still really painful for people. Anyone that works a trade show that's a plant lover, right? And you grow these plants for a specific reason, for a time and place. And then, I mean, like for cultivate, you end up donating a lot of the plants. But like as a young person who was plant fanatic, and then we would have extras that like it'd be like toward the end of summer where you're not going to sell it all and you start pulling back a little bit. So like we would have a lot of extras on like seeded perennials that like the one of the owners, not my boss, would do all these like more than he should ever plant, right? So we had so many 4-inch squares. And so then like and of course they were pot tight and then like an 1801 tray. So then like everything would grow in together, get really tall, right? And then flop over like
yeah,
delphinium. And so then you would space them and so eventually my boss would be like, okay, like there's this whole bench of stuff. Go throw that stuff away, in the dumpster or whatever. I'm like, I remember, I'm like, what? Like all of it? Right. So then, like,
y-
as a young, like, I like plants. I like that first year, I think I brought home truckloads of plants because I was just like, what? Can I have them? Like, do we have to throw them away? And so then I brought like so much stuff home. And so I think it was like just really painful. Or like in the house plant section, there's like that corn. I don't think that's as popular anymore. Those corn plants, it'd be like a stalk. You remember that? It'd be
yeah,
like, and then the plant would come out here and so you'd have like these three big stems with these, but then like if one broke or two broke, you'd have like this one weird
yeah,
stem. It's not really sellable. It's not like a good quality retail item. So then it would be like in a trash pile. But then again, like as a young person, I was like, wait, why I have to throw it away? So I got so many like oddball house plants that like were really, I mean, looking back, were really ugly because like half the plant was dead but then half the plant was growing. So I'm like, oh, I'll keep that. I'll take it home,
yeah.
not knowing that probably I think I brought some stuff with spider mite and some other things,
Oh
home.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that was a little bit that was painful as a young person working at a garden center.
Yeah, I to that point, we had something that most garden centers didn't have
You
because
guys,
it was a family operation and family farm. So we had like anywhere from 4 to 6 cows at a time right behind the greenhouse. And so what I would do is we would take out most of that stuff. And this is where like my knowledge of biology started coming in when I was in high school is anything that was edible or non-poisonous, I'd throw to the cows. So, like, all like, it was just like, we're hucking plants out there, and they probably ate things they shouldn't have either, but they ended up being fine. But, yeah, we'd throw everything out there, and then, like, cows cause some, foot disruption in the field that they're living in, and so the media mix would just get incorporated into the soil. But it was always it being a small operation and being we were, like, trying to cut costs, that was the worst part, is that we would save all of the pots, and I don't mean, I don't like, there was a year we were trying to save packs, Seth, like film packs, like 1204s, and, like, I'm ripping out 1204s, and I'm like, "Okay," and then quickly I realized, like, we were never gonna reuse packs, like, no one we had stacks of them because it wasn't just, like, a sheet of them, how they
Yeah.
come out, it was like,
Yeah.
oh, individual ones, and then you could never get them apart, and I was like, "Why are we doing this?" And so but, like, 4.5 inches, we used to reuse those, and, like, looking back now, like, definitely not sanitary, from a plant health perspective. But we'd like 4.5 inch material, like it'd be like, all right, we're short on pots. Like, go get them stacked from the barn. We're gonna put these in the trays. Yeah, that 1801s we'd reuse. Anything bigger than that, of course, gallon pot material.
We would use
Use.
is like those 4 inch, they would all be stacked. So I
Yeah,
remember you have an 1801 tray with just stacks of single pots. And
yeah.
then they would all be like, so you have this like 1801 tray with like a tower of the items that I think were probably cleaned, sort of, you know.
No, no, we were never cleaning this. Some of these were like frozen, slimy, like I don't know, because like depending on when we get to them, it'd be like, oh, we didn't clean out that greenhouse last year. We had to clean it out before we start. So it'd be in January, just cleaning out some greenhouses, and then we'd stack the pots. And we'd shrink wrap them, and then half the time we'd forget where we'd be like, I know we got a pallet of 1801s around here. And then we'd buy new ones and we'd be like, I found that pallet. And be like, are you gonna make me use the old ones or can I use new ones? Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, go ahead, Seth.
Like, I mean, like, would that roll into like young people should be working at garden centers because, we had fun, so other young
I
people can
well,
have fun too?
only if they can get through my last gripe, and this is a quick one, but you mentioned watering earlier, right? That was I don't hate watering, but we constantly were running over hoses and beating things all to hell in dirt roads and paved gravel. Whenever I don't know, I know Dram has nice equipment, but I don't take the proper care of my equipment that I should. I have yet to find a situation where after the first use or first season on a hose or a nozzle to where I can go water and don't just soak myself. And in a greenhouse, like that was always a problem. Is you're like, yeah, you got to water 6, 7, 8, 9. We had numbers for greenhouses. It's like you're taking the back half today, and then technically that by our standards would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Be like you're taking the back half, and I'd go back there to water, and by the time that I finished, like my shoes, my pants, it just looked like I peed my entire pants because I'd just be soaked in water, and I that can't say it was fun.
You didn't wear the watering boots?
No,
I feel like we had to do that because we would inevitably have, because you'd have the little shut off valve, but like they would always leak. Right? Like,
always.
how often were you watering and you're like your hands are like totally like this and you're just trying not to get sprayed or you're like trying to hold it at a certain angle so the spray goes away from your body. Yeah. With that though, with the hoses, the kinks, like it would be like totally irrational because it's possible, but you'd be like around the corner and you're trying to get to like the very end of the bench and so then you have to walk all the way back around, kinda like, roll the hose, so that way it was just always, like, really annoying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but you know what? If young folks can get past all that, I do think that there's a lot of fun to be had and a lot of learning that people can get out of working in a garden center. And I think that that is a great job for any young person looking for something to do. And as long as you can take direction well and listen to people, you'll have success in a garden center. It's not, you don't have to have a special set of skills. You just got to be able to listen and communicate and have a good time.
Yeah. No, I think it's, like, really great. I always promote that I think that every person should work in, like, some sort of service industry or retail
Yeah.
and just get a view of how to help people as part of your job, and I think it gives you, like, a outlook on kinda everything else
Yeah.
differently than if you don't have that sorta job. And so I think
Yeah.
that, but then to do it with plants where like everyone's super jazzed and happy is like kind of a best of two worlds.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. All right, Seth. Well, I feel like we talked a great amount about our experience in the garden center, probably more than anybody really wanted to listen to today. But we gave him something, and Bill can look back and be proud of us. So it is that time for shout outs and hot takes. Any shout outs or hot takes? Let's start with shout outs. What are your shout outs, Seth? Who's shouting out? Shouting out, not shouting at.
I saw online just recently that the great Chuck Norris, he passed away. Yeah.
Today?
Hey,
Finish your shout out. I am at a loss for words.
right? I was like,
It's 86.
I feel like he was just on a commercial. I don't know if it was with the Super Bowl or something. Like, I feel like he was just on something, but I just, I feel like I'm gonna have to watch some Chuck Norris movies this weekend. Delta Force, like, some of those were like some real classics. And I don't know about for you, but I feel like for me, like Chuck Norris, like my dad was super into Chuck Norris, and so I don't know, he was such a great. So I just like that's a shout out. So anyone that like and for like the young people watching this that probably don't know who Chuck Norris is, other than the memes on the internet, like you should watch one of his movies.
Well, movies, sure, agreed. Now you're quite a bit older than me. So,
Old.
so no, but I think you resonate more with Chuck Norris movies, and I've seen my fair share going back into 80s and such. Agreed. But one of my favorite shows as a kid was Walker Texas Ranger. That, when you're in Texas, look behind you because that's where the Ranger's gonna be.
Wouldn't you still do the kick?
Dude, I
Like what type of kick is that? Like a crescent kick or something?
it's
Where like
a roundhouse kick.
he would roundhouse the gun, like he'd be like the robber would be like pointing a gun, and he would
Eh,
like roundhouse. Yeah, can you
loved it.
show us that? Can you stand up and show us a roundhouse
No,
kick?
no.
Why not?
We'll include that in the live version at Cultivate.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
It looks I can still do it. I do it all the time.
Oh,
It does not look good if I'm like standing up. And yes, I'm wearing pants despite working from home. As you saw, I was wearing khakis. I'll
house.
kick over their heads. They're still little.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, well, rest in peace, Chuck Norris. That's a good shout out, Seth. What else you got?
You know what? I actually shout out to Heman Garden Center up in Canada, the Hemans.
Our buddy Will.
Will they got a sustainability award?
From you?
No, not from us. They like it was on LinkedIn, so I thought that was super cool. They do a lot up there on just being a sustainable organization and company servicing their Canadian market. So shout out to Will and his team.
Oh yeah, love Will. Will's a good guy. They do a great job up there. Thoroughly enjoy catching up with Will every chance I can. So yeah, shout out to Will Heeman and the folks up at Heeman's.
Yeah, what do you got? You got anything good or a hot take? I know you like to be a little controversial with your hot takes.
Hot takes. I don't know, man. This hot take. I think March Madness has lost some of its luster. I feel like their games have already started, and maybe maybe I'm off Instagram, so I'm not see so much of it, or I don't watch much TV. But I yesterday I got an alert because I have CBS Sports app on my phone, and they were like, "Oh, Duke in trouble in the first half," and I was like, "The game started." Like, and I just don't know, but I feel like there used to be a lot more March madness.
Did you do a bracket?
I did, but I filled it out, like, Sunday. I didn't know when it was starting, but I did 2. We have one at JR Peters, and I actually think it's the same one because I don't really watch college basketball, and so I just kinda go through and pick teams that I know historically are pretty decent,
I
yeah.
wonder I mean, I don't know. I've always used the excuse of, like, for not being into things because of my kids or whatever, but, like, for my daughter, because she's 15, is, like, totally obsessed with brackets right now. Because it's like I think it's like all the kids are talking about it. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, she's totally obsessed. She needs a bracket. She can't stop talking about it. She has to watch it. And so now our son was like, "Oh, I wish I did a bracket." So now
Maybe that's not dead. Maybe I'm just too old for
yep.
NCAA March Madness.
Yeah. So I think so next year now we're gonna have to do brackets with both kids, and I think actually because the first round's done now, right?
No, no, it
No?
started yesterday. After I say it was done, or I say that, like, it came and I haven't heard much, but then once I knew it was here, I was like, "Oh, I better catch up on this." Yeah, the first day was yesterday, so you've still got more first round games to play.
Because I think I'm gonna do like I'm gonna do a top 18, right? The 18 goes from 64 to 18.
No, 18's not one of them.
No, no, no. It's like you see a final four,
It's Final 4, Elite 8, and
yeah,
then
Elite Eight.
Sweet 16.
Oh, so then what's does it go to
32
60?
32, the math. Because 'Cause we're
Uh,
right now you're in the round of 64.
yeah. Because when it goes to the like, so then for my son, because he wants to participate now, I might do like the round of 32, just to give
Okay.
it like kind of play along, you know.
Yeah, and see who he picks. I like that.
So
Um
it's not March Madness's fault. It's just your fault.
Fair. Shout out. I'm pop culturing right now. Shout out goes to I'm reading a really good book this week in preparation because the movie is coming out. And this book has been recommended to me so much that I was like, I need to read this before the movie actually comes out because I'll want to see the movie, but I want to make sure I read the book first. And that's Project Hail Mary. And I will say, it's like a space sci-fi book, Seth. I will say that this book, I know the movie's coming out maybe today or next week. Read the book, man. I think I have, like I'm at, like, 97% done, so I'm effectively almost done with it, and, I'm reading on my Kindle. That's how I know I'm 97%, is that it gives me a percentage of pages, and, it is a fantastic, fun book, and it's very if you love science, you'll love it, and for our industry folks, it's by the same guy that wrote The Martian, which I know is kind of a cult favorite in our industry because he's a botanist, the main character, but the author's name is Andy Weir. And again, the book is called Project Hail Mary.
Has he wrote another book
I
other
think
than?
so. I think so.
I think I might have read The Martian also.
You could have. It'd been
Uh,
one of the 5 books you've ever read.
I've read like 20. I need to get back into it, but the book is always better than the movie though.
Well, and they say the early critics reviews of the movie say that it's Ryan Gosling, and they say that is like the performance of his career. Which reading the book, I can totally see Ryan Gosling playing this character. So good casting. Can't wait to see the movie now that I'm done with the book. But with that, Seth, we have occupied enough of people's time for this week. We encourage you to like, comment, share, follow wherever you get your GH Squad pod listens from. We are available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. Bill said, didn't know that was still a thing, but shout out. And then also on YouTube, if you want to see the video version, if you're listening to this and want to see all of our wonderful mannerisms, check us out on YouTube. And then also you can follow, like, and share on Instagram as well. Even though I'm still on my Instagram break, these other two Yahoos are certainly there, and I'm probably posting funny pictures of me. If they're not, missed opportunity. So yeah, so thanks for hanging out with us this week. We'll look forward to getting back with our co-host hopefully next week. I don't know if schedule will allow, but we'll try to work it out. And until then, yeah, stay frosty, you guys.
All right, later. Bye.